All right, guys, welcome to Tuesday night. Had a good day overall. Had a really good podcast this morning, which I ended up feeling really good about overall, and I ended up getting some good feedback from people just who kind of resonated with the message that I was trying to get across. So that's good, because I'm never totally sure if I'm making sense, mostly because at this point it's really just been me, and I just kind of elicit some feedback after the fact. So thank you guys, those of you who reached out. It really does mean a lot to me. I really enjoyed doing this, so anytime somebody takes even a second out of their day to say anything about it, or positive, negative, otherwise, it really does mean a lot just to have people listening and interested on any level. So that was super cool. And this morning's topic was pretty rough for me, honestly, because I haven't had a discussion about those things openly with pretty much anyone. I can count maybe 3 people who I've had like portions of a conversation about those things, and it usually ends up with me being like really emotional and just overall struggling to really just get any sort of message across, just really explain myself in any way. Even now, it's still kind of difficult, and so I appreciate everybody who took the time. Overall today, I started thinking more about a few other things, and some stuff came up. I was talking to one of our health coaches, and she's incredible, and she was asking me just about my opinion on something that she was working on with one of her clients, and it just kind of sparked an idea for me that I had been working on with other people in recent history, and it was the concept of FOMO mostly. And I think everybody knows what FOMO is, but just in case you don't, it's the fear of missing out. And I think people use it kind of loosely for the most part, but don't necessarily think about all of the ways that it applies to our lives. And in this particular sense, I kind of tailor it to young men, especially in the social media age. I think that it's just an important thing to touch on overall. We've talked a little bit about how people get caught up in spinning their wheels and just like indecision and paralysis by analysis and a few of those things. And I think a part of that kind of stems from FOMO. And so to elaborate, I guess, where my head goes on this, just to kind of get it all out, kind of talk it through, just full rant style, I guess, would be we often look at like social media kind of just like zombie style. We just do it. It's not even something we think about. It's just part of our lives. We just engage. And all social media is, for the most part, is like negative nonsense, or like a highlight reel, or people selling like MLMs, like skinny shakes and stuff. So that's pretty funny. But overall, I think it's mostly negative bullshit and like human highlight reels. And we get caught up in seeing that so regularly. We end up becoming this example of our environment. Our environment has such a heavy burden on us. And part of it is the social media. And I think as young men, and I've talked to a few women about this as well, and they've assured me that, it's a young woman thing as well. I just don't want to speak out of turn, I guess. But for me, I know that I see young guys all the time try to get these moonshots. They try to get these big wins, these acute, short-term big wins, because they don't want to waste their time. They don't want to spend time working on something that ultimately won't benefit them or won't serve them. And for me, it kind of feels a lot like the magic pill conversation, where you just want to take the pill and get the results immediately. It feels a lot like that, but just kind of by another name, or in different clothes, I guess. And the FOMO comes in mainly from seeing so many people, quote unquote, right? So many people and their quick wins, their just little, a look into their lives, that window where all you're seeing is their wins, and you're not seeing the effort that they put in leading up to it. You're just seeing the culmination. And sometimes it's just bullshit, and they're just lying, or they're just over embellishing in some cases. But that's not the point. The point is we see it, and we don't even think that way. We're just, oh man, I want to be like that. I want to get that. And so we FOMO super hard. We try to spend all of our time on these short-term, high-yield, quote-unquote, projects, instead of staying disciplined and getting our work done and going through the process. And I think that's really dangerous. And we were talking about that a little bit today, and I just kind of got thinking about it. Mostly because when you do that, the obvious parts are like, all right, well, that's not real. Of course, we get tricked by that, and it ends up we end up wasting our time working on things that are gonna be fast or quick windfalls or big windfalls. And we do that because we don't want to waste our time. We end up doing that exact thing. We end up wasting a bunch of time because it seems to make more sense in the moment, I guess. I'm not sure. But by doing that, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to experience what it's like to go through the process. And I think that's kind of fucked, because we don't even realize we do it. And here's why I think that. When I was younger, when I was in my teens and early 20s, I had a really bad problem with disassociation to myself, specifically to myself in the future. There was a point in my life where this might sound ridiculous, and some people are just like, who know me now, think that that's just a silly thing to say, but it's true. There was a point in my life where I didn't think that it was all that likely that I would live past 30. And that might sound really morbid, but it's just like, stuff happens, and I had a weird upbringing type of situation, and I don't know, people do dumb stuff. And at that point in my life, it just seemed more likely that something would happen. I would do something dumb, or whatever the case was. And maybe that was just me, and if it was, whatever, but I'm okay now, guys, don't worry. It caused me to have this real serious disassociation with who I would be later in life. So what I mean by that is, if older Derek wasn't who I was at that point or at that moment, and I would never be that person. That was a different person. So whatever stuff they had to deal with as a result of my actions, whatever future or, career or whatever anything that person was getting involved with, it wasn't me, and it didn't matter, because I was more concerned about what mattered at that very moment, because I didn't want to miss out on whatever might happen on any given day. And as a result, I would avoid a lot of things. I would try to actively do less to leave room for what might happen. And it was completely based off of this FOMO principle. I wanted to make sure that if something crazy or great was going to happen, I was ready and available to do it. And that was obviously a silly thing to do, a young, dumb boy's thing to do. But thinking about it now, I see that same behavior in a lot of people, just in a slightly different way, maybe a slightly different frame. And I think a lot of it comes down to people wanting to be as proactive as they possibly can and get as many wins. I see a lot of people who want to be innovators and who want to be business people, and there was that hot period in time where everybody wanted to be a CEO, and that was sexy, and they want to hustle, they want to grind, but they don't even know what that means. And what ends up happening is it kind of turns to that saying, good intentions are, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I think that kind of applies in this scenario, because I see a lot of these people trying really hard to get these quick wins, these really big acute wins, by not committing to the little things, by not being disciplined, by not just going through the process of doing the things that they need to do every single day. And they end up shooting themselves in the foot, for the lack of a better term, because by opting to not do those little things as a result of their FOMO, they end up actually eliminating or just negating opportunities that would come otherwise because of their effort, or they end up eliminating possible experiences and networking opportunities because they don't put themselves in the position to be action takers. They don't execute properly. They just wait. They just, save themselves. Or they put half effort or half work into this quote unquote next big thing opportunity, but because they've never given themselves the opportunity to practice executing, or practice consistency, or practice all these little things, they actually make very little of the opportunity, and it turns into a nothing, and it's just another thing to fail at or mail in. And it's easy to brush off because, it was nothing. I can just quit that. And I just thought that was so interesting how that seems to be a big issue, at least in young men. And I'm sure in some, 30, 40, 50-year-old men as well. And I just think about how intuitive and how counterproductive it is to put yourself in that position where all you think about is the big wins, the top opportunities, the windfalls, when the fortune is in the consistency and the follow-up and the discipline, all these little things. But for some reason, nobody seems to know that or wants to believe it, Or maybe people just aren't talking about it enough. Maybe it's not sexy enough to talk about discipline and talk about handling your everyday responsibilities. Maybe the message isn't out there enough because it's not cool. I'm honestly not sure. But think about it. Everything that you do each day, it's the opportunity for an experience. It's the opportunity to produce some kind of work or effort that you can then reflect back on and learn from. Develop a pattern. Create a consistency. Show a consistency. Build a relationship. Build a network. All of these things happen through everyday, seemingly small or insignificant actions. And for some reason, we're just caught up in the highlight reel. I think it's really important to have a mentor for that reason, or at least a core group of people whom you learn from and learn from you, but are willing to check you. I really can't explain how important that is, to have the right people and to identify that every person, regardless of their professional title or level of experience or any of those things, everyone needs to be managed to some degree. Accountability and growth they're synonymous, basically. You need those things. You need someone to check your perspective. You're not going to be right all the time. And you're also not going to be right to every other person. You could be right for you, but you might not be right for someone else. So what that means is if you have to interact with people who aren't exactly like you, you might need help working with those types of people in order to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. It's just interesting. I was talking before. Her name's Bessie, our health coach. She's way more than a health coach, but that's just her official title. She works with me directly on so many things, and she's such a talented human. It's absurd. And we were talking about this specific concept a little bit, and she offered me a little story that I'll retell here, but I want to give her full credit because I'd never heard it before, and I'm probably going to butcher it right now. So Bessie, I'm very sorry, but it was cool, and I liked it a lot, so take it as a compliment, ? But we were talking about this, and it came down to, for her, and I definitely came away with the same belief, that it's all about allowing yourself the experiences, allowing yourself to be what you are, where you are, when you are, and take in the fullness of that moment and that opportunity to fully master that place that you're in, that experience level, that job, or whatever the case is. And she framed it with this little story about like acorns. And she said, if you're walking through a forest and you see an acorn, you don't look at that acorn and say, hey, why aren't you a tree? Why aren't you an oak? You allow the acorn to just be an acorn. And I think the next one was, you don't look at a sapling and do the same thing and say, hey, why aren't you an oak? Why aren't you a tree yet? You allow it to do those things. And the reason being is that it has to go through the full experience of being whatever it is, whenever it is. Because in order to fully mature into its final form, like an oak, like a tree, it has to first go through the full process of being an acorn. Anything can happen if it gets thrown off track. It can get, damaged. It can get eaten by a bird. It has to be allowed to go through the whole process. That's the only way that it can fully mature. Same thing for the sapling. Same thing for every other iteration up to that point to the full-grown tree. It has to be given the time and the experience in whatever form it is for however long it needs to be there. And she was saying people don't do that to themselves. They simply look at other people and say, why am I not where that person is? Or why can't I do that thing? Or, whatever situation it is. What I took away from it was that's absolutely true, but that's the FOMO. People are so hard on themselves because they aren't wherever they feel like they should be, and most of the time they never put the work in to be where they feel like they deserve to be in the first place. It's not a good answer. Well, maybe it is. You know what? It is a good answer. Fuck that. It is a good answer. It's just not a sexy answer. Nobody likes to hear that they just have to, do the work. They have to learn. They have to educate themselves. Life is hard. Success is hard. That's the way it is. That's like, everybody has the opportunity, for the most part, right, to look at themselves, intrinsically look inside and say, I need to work on these things, because success isn't a straight line either. Success can be a lot of things to a lot of people. It ultimately depends on what you want and what you're interested in, and how much you want to sacrifice in order to get to that place. And it all comes back to the acorn. You've got to commit to the place and the direction, and then you've got to allow yourself to mature within that place in the amount of time that's necessary and continue moving in that direction. If you skip steps, you're going to end up having holes in your game, if you will. You're going to have gaps in your knowledge, and you're going to end up producing shitty work that doesn't look or feel like the quality or level that it should for the task that you're committing to. So I guess what I'm saying here, just to wrap this up, because I think I've really been rambling a little bit, is we really have to stop focusing on the long-term big sexy project. Stop clout chasing, stop trying to be an influencer, stop trying to get likes on Instagram, and focus on the boring work. Focus on the day-to-day. Focus on the micro efforts that make you successful and compound your success every single day. Building systems that build off of each other, that work off of each other, so that way you can continue to move forward and then be able to teach the next person, be able to replace yourself, so that way the next person can backfill you as the acorn and you can become the sapling. I think that's so important, that perspective on doing the boring work, doing the nitty-gritty, dirty work in the early stages, and allowing yourself to be a beginner. or whatever phase you're in, allowing yourself to be in that phase. Because you could opt to do nothing and wait. You could. And you could be frustrated and all that bullshit. But nobody else cares. You're the only one frustrated. And no matter what you do, tomorrow's going to happen. Whether or not you accomplished anything today or not. So you can get a little bit better today, or you can wait and hope that something pops up tomorrow. That's how I feel, guys. That's what I've got for today. So we'll put this up and shoot me some questions. Send me your thoughts. Let's talk more about this. This is an exciting topic for me. I really enjoy it. I'll talk to you guys soon. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening. It really does mean a lot to me.